This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking, and my guest today is Carina. She is running for mayor of Brockton. She is 23 years of age, and you should look to the camera too. And she's going to talk about her background and her platform and why she's running. Carina, give your last name, because I think it's Mompelas, am I correct?
Mompelas.
Mompelas. It looked like it was. That's why I didn't say it, because I was going to screw it up. And you are running for the mayor. You'd be the first woman mayor. No, we had one other, Linda Belzotti, mayor of the city of Brockton. Why are you running for mayor?
I'm running for mayor because I think Brockton, it's time for a change in Brockton. I feel like in the past couple of years, we've been kind of going downhill. Our education system is not as great as it used to be. We have the opioid epidemic that's going out of hand. We have homelessness that went up by 6% in just 1 year. We're higher than the national average. And right now, it's time for a change. It's time for us to get back up to where we were and maybe even exceed where we were.
Brockton had one of the best school systems in the country. And that's the key word, had one of the best education systems in the country. Mm-hmm. It is, according to Boston Magazine, one of the lowest rated now in the state of the Commonwealth. Yeah. So there's something wrong.
There's something wrong, and I think the main problem is we keep on trying to throw money at a problem that money won't fix, because we have a lot of money in the education system right now. We have one of the highest funded education systems. However, we're not utilizing that money the right way. The money's not being allocated the right way. We fired about 82 teachers last year, and then we're overloading these classrooms with about 40 students, and when that happens, the No Child Left Behind Act is not being implemented because 40 students do not have the same learning styles. And when you have 40 kids that most of them don't have the same learning styles, some of them end up failing because we can't accommodate them the right way.
We want to make sure that every individual student achieves the fullest of their potential in life. And do you think remedial help is given in the Brockton schools?
It's not. I was speaking to when I went to the bank, and I was speaking to one of the managers there, and she was asking me, "Oh, wait, you're running for mayor. You look so young." So we got into it, and she started talking about how her son has ADHD, and he was told that he was going to be given longer test time taken, but basically he wasn't given that, and the teachers did not know that he was supposed to be allotted longer time to take tests. So the thing is, he's failing. He ended up failing and has to go to summer school because we didn't accommodate him the right way. We didn't help him excel where he could have excelled if he was given the right amount of time to take those tests, if he was given some extra help, if we had classes to help him achieve the goals that he needed to achieve. And instead, he was placed in a classroom with kids who were perfectly fine, who were getting straight A's, and he was struggling, and no one was helping him. And because of that, the system failed.
The system failed.
Exactly.
But that means that the administration of the school department is not well run.
It's not.
And I think we're overburdened with administrators.
Yes, we are, and we have less teachers and bigger class sizes, and the maximum class size, I believe, is 31 or 32, and we're having 40 in one class. We're breaking the law, and nothing's being done about it.
Brockton always exempts itself from the rules and regulations. There is two major issues that are going to be emerging pretty soon in the city, and I don't know how they're going to be addressed. Everybody seems to whitewash them. It's the unfunded pension liability. Years ago, they never put the money away to pay the pensions. Now it's going to reach a point where the revenue doesn't meet, the pension revenue doesn't meet the cost. How would you address that? Do you think
First,
we have a contractual obligation to those pensioners?
We do.
That they worked thinking they were going to get those pensions. Now there's not going to be the revenue probably to pay them. This isn't the first time Brockton was in receivership before.
It's not. Last year there was an instance that everybody got their pension checks late. We've been struggling with the issue, and that's because the city budget is not being handled the right way. So I think that all comes from handling the budget in the right way, and also prioritizing pension, because I feel like right now it's not being prioritized because we're dealing with bigger issues that we're not even dealing with the right way. But then we're spending so much time.
Well, it's going to have a ripple effect, because if they can't pay it, someone will go to court, the courts will step in, and they will pay it.
Well, the thing is, we also need to work on bringing in more revenues. Right now, Brockton per capita is about 21,000, and that's pretty low for
It is.
A city. So the thing is, we need to work on making more deals with franchises and bringing more businesses into our community. That way, even the residents can get a tax break. That way, we're bringing in more money, and we don't have to fight so much with the federal government to get money, because we'd be making our own income. And right now, we're fighting the federal government to get more money, to get more funding for the education system.
But
we're
is
not-
it the burden of the federal government to finance really local problems that they had nothing to do with? Why should the federal government have to step up and bail out all the cities in the country?
Well,
Really?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, what's the incentive for them to step in when you're not doing anything with the money that you have right now? You're not utilizing it the right way, so why give you more? If I'm being a lender and I'm seeing that you have about a budget of almost 450 million, and you're not using it the right way, then why would I want to give you more? And I feel like even though we're in a lawsuit with the federal government for more money, we're not proving to them why we need more, why they should give us more money.
With the lawsuits against the Commonwealth of Mass to increase the funding for the schools against the governor, it probably will take 20 years to come to fruition. I mean, lawsuits do not move quickly through the courts. And there is no judge that's going to side against the state government. Usually, they have a bias to be with the state government. So that bias is going to come into play. Eventually, they'll end up in federal court. But you and I could be gone by the time it ever comes to actually gets a decision out of the courts.
Yeah.
The courts move very slowly for reasons. It's so they don't interfere with things. It is not a quick fix. Now, you're running in a city that's overwhelmingly Democratic, which is not healthy in itself, because a lack of a two-party system doesn't breed new ideas. It breeds the same old machine, which is the quote, the machine that's run the city for years has been the Creedon machine. And they've determined who was going to be mayor and who wasn't going to be mayor. Maybe the machine is slowly dying. I don't know. But, I mean, he is still the clerk of courts, and his brother is the clerk of courts and district court, and Bobby, the head of that operation, was a state senator. Then he was the clerk of courts in Superior Court. His wife was the state rep. So it's a political machine that has been able to deliver. I don't know if it will still be able to deliver. You're out there, and do you find the voters engaged?
To be honest, it's
very discouraging, I know.
Yes, I've had a lot of shut doors.
Right.
So it's hard. Most of the times, because they already have their political figure who they're following in place, and so it's just hard. But I'm trying.
The political experts think, from who I talk to, that the two finalists on the thing will be, and you've got to make sure that you get into the final to compete, will be Mark Lawton and Robert Sullivan. They think that the minority candidates will be all shot down in this election for everything. Do you sense that when you're out there? Is the minority community actively engaged in this political election?
I actually think they are, because, for instance, I I've been getting a lot of shut doors for every candidate. Some people say I'm for Jimmy. Some people say I'm for Jean. Some people say I feel like it's pretty scattered. So I wouldn't say, even though there is a big chance. I think Bob Sullivan right now is pretty ahead. I guess Mark Lawton was kind of sneaking up on people. I didn't even expect Mark Lawton to.
He raised over $40,000 in his first fundraiser.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, and all the money in the city seems to be heading that way. If I don't know if that translates into votes. I mean, he's got the issue of. He has the issue of not living in the city. He moved to Bridgewater. He was a state rep from Brockton for a number of years, but you don't know if the Brockton that he got elected doesn't exist anymore. It's a different city now. The city's change. People die, new people move in, people exit it, and it's hard to stay involved when you don't live in the city. I don't know. I mean, that's the unknown factor. The old guard is all for him in the city. I looked at his list of donors, and I was amazed at some of the people. I thought some of them had died. They came out of the woodwork. So I'm amazed. I mean, I can't tell you. You're out there. You find that Bobby Sullivan's doing well?
I think he's doing well, but I think a light should be shed on the fact that Mark Lawton does not live in Brockton. And I feel like people are undermining it and they're pushing it aside. But it's very important.
It's a pattern here in the state. Barney Frank never lived in his congressional district. He ran against Margaret Heckler, a Republican woman that had held the seat for 16 years. He never lived in that district.
But that's a problem because for you to run for mayor, you have to live in that city for.
I would hope,
yes.
But I mean, it doesn't mean you don't know what the voters are going to say. He claims he's going to be moving back into Brockton.
He claims he's going to be moving back, but right now he's not back yet.
Right.
And that's a problem. And he should not have been allowed to even put in his nominated papers for mayor.
The law is it's only an intent to reside. We have Supreme Court, Massachusetts Supreme Court says that the law is only an intent to reside. If you decide you're going to reside there, you meet the residency requirement. And so, I mean, I agree. I mean, I understand what you're saying. But they are an old name, in the city of Brockton with a different group. I mean, younger people probably don't know the name. Older people do know the name.
Yeah, I didn't know the name until I saw them on the street. So I saw the signs on the street. So. I
mean, and they're popping up everywhere.
They are. Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed in the last week, in the beginning there were a lot of Bobby Sullivan signs. And before that, I noticed in the Cape Verdean community there were a lot of Jimmy Pereira signs that have come down, and Mark signs have come up. Now, Jimmy said they weren't authorized, but I asked some of the people that had them know that they've swapped their allegiance.
Yes, which I'm really shocked about because at first, when I first started, a lot of people, when you try to speak to the Converdians, a lot of them were strongly for Jimmy, and now it kind of, I don't know what done it.
They're not.
They're not anymore. So
I don't
know what happened.
Because of an old name from Brockton got involved, and Cape Verdean communities used to always support the older names. They're known, for doing that. I at one thought that the city council was going to do much better. I don't think his candidacy is doing well. It might be with the Haitian community doing well, but they're not. They're not a big enough group to get you elected. The city is 48% white still.
The last conversation I had with him, he said he was number one. Talk about the polling. I'm like, I didn't even know we had a poll. We already had one, but he's saying that he's at the top. And
I don't think he makes the final. I think Jimmy's stronger than he is. And I do agree with me that you're out there. Jimmy seems to be fading.
That's the problem. That's why.
And so isn't Councilor Davenport seems to be fading. I saw people who had his signs up told me they're not voting. I went to somebody's house to get a signature the other day. One of them's the wife's a Democrat, and she handed Davenport. She's not voting for him any longer.
Yeah, he seems to be getting a lot of negative backlash on Facebook, on social media. So I don't know where that's coming from. It just shifted in a matter of 1 week, I would say.
Yeah.
So
I think that he's in a tough battle all of a sudden.
yes,
His
I think
rising
I'm touched
star,
because I feel like
his
no,
rising star might not be rising anymore. It might be falling.
and I think that's because of Bob and Mark.
Yeah, I
as
do
soon
too.
as they
I
realized
agree
that
with you.
the whole game changed.
Once Carpenter died, I agree with that.
Yes.
The factors change. But the good thing is it's a lot of participation in the election, and hopefully it will be a record turnout, and people have a choice, and that you would be one of the youngest mayors in the state.
Yes.
What are your future aspirations? Do you want to go to law school? Do you want to?
I do, in the future, want to go to law school. But my end goal was always politics, and because I think in politics, when you're placed in an authority figure, you have the opportunity to make changes to the community.
You
positive
do.
changes, and that's what I've been trying to do. That's why I started running for mayor, because I want to make some changes.
And change is good.
It is good. It is good, especially when it's for the better.
Positive change.
Positive changes. And right now, I know a lot of people don't see my vision. I know a lot of people are looking at my age. However, I don't think that success or excellence or making a difference is relevant to age. I think it's relevant to determination, perseverance, and just the will that you have to accomplish what you set out to accomplish.
Some people look at it that life experiences broader when you're older and you're running a city, you've been through it and understand more things. Do you agree with that?
I think
The most successful president of my lifetime was Ronald Reagan, and he was the oldest one. And he was very successful at what he accomplished. It brought the Berlin Wall down. We had one of the best, not the economy is better today, but we had one of the best economies after disastrous Jimmy Carter, and he was a disaster. Growing up in my era, we had gas lines for 2 hours to get gasoline under Jimmy Carter. You couldn't go anyplace. He told everybody we had to live with less. Well, the American public threw him out of office very quickly. Living with less was not what they wanted to do. Now, do you have a specific goal in mind that you want to accomplish in the city? Now, one of the hottest issue is both Sullivan and Lawton came out again. They were against sanctuary cities. They have both come out against it. They both have said they will veto it if it comes to their desk.
I don't even take that into account. Well, I didn't even think of something because no, we're not going to do a sanctuary city, so I'm not even giving my energy towards that just because it wouldn't work well in our benefit. And I'm thinking of the whole, and I'm thinking of one nation, I'm not thinking of one race, I'm thinking of everybody as a whole, I'm thinking of Brockton as a community. It's not going to work well for us. So I don't see a sanctuary city. I haven't given light to it because it's not going to happen.
Well, it is difficult, as you would agree to. It's a very divisive issue within the city.
To be honest, I think the politicians that are bringing it out are saying it to get more votes, but they know for a fact they're not going to push for this. This is not something that it's. Well, we're already having so much trouble dealing with what we're dealing with now. Imagine bringing in more. The government just placing people in our city that we're going to have to work. It's no.
And if they cut off federal aid to the city,
Exactly.
It-
And we need it. We need it. A lot of the people are living off public housing. We have a lot of public housing units in Brockton. We have a lot of people living off welfare. We have a lot of people living off SNAP. And the thing is,
How much do they
If-
get on welfare a month?
I'm not sure, it depends.
I don't know either. I've never known. But it is, you can't really, it is a terrible existence.
To me, I wouldn't say it's because I'm for helping people, but I think there's a limit to it. I feel like the fact that we're giving it for people who have been on this for 10 years, for 20 years, people have lived in public housing for years, and you have a waiting list that's overloaded. It shouldn't be. Public housing aid was not put there for you to live your life off it. It was supposed to be an aid for you to transition into getting on your feet. And I think that there should be a limit to how long people can live in public housing. There should be a limit to how long people can get welfare.
Is the
There should be a
public
limitation to
housing
it.
safe in Brockton?
Some of them are not. A lot of them are not, because you have a lot of low-income people placed in one compartment, and when you're desperate, you do desperate things. So the thing is, you have a lot of crimes, you have a lot of dealings going on in these projects, and you have where Pluff is located. You have a project right across from there, and you have one of the Pluff is considered one of the highest ranked middle schools. So you have to be really smart to go there. And then right across from there, and right next to it, there's a park that drug deals happen all the time. You have projects that drug deals happen all the time, and that's not a safe area for you to even place a school. So the fact that it's placed there right next to a project is, to me, it's baffling. It shouldn't have been there. So I feel like there are a lot of mistakes that we have to fix in Brockton. Our kids are being exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to at a young age, and it's because that we're not cleaning up the street.
What we're doing is robbing them of their youth.
We are. Kids can go out on the street and ride their bikes in Brockton.
This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking. You can reach us at 508-822-1106. We're going to take a short break so the sponsors can hear paid advertising. This is Larry Novak, back with Politically Speaking. We have a candidate for mayor that we're running in the city of Brockton. Carina, I want to ask you a question. Brockton makes the 100 most dangerous communities in America criminal list. What would you do to address the rising crime rate in the city? Now, Mark Lorden says it's decreasing. It might have decreased somewhat, but we're still on that list.
First, it's not about whether the problem is decreasing, it's about where it's at. And the fact that it's at a high, if the average is really high, something has to be done about it. First, we need more policing. Police is third on the budget list. So the thing is, we have the opportunity, they have the budget to do something more. We need to flood the streets with policing. We need to look at what's making the crime rate so high. Homelessness is a big part of it, because when people are in desperate situations, they do desperate things. You have drug circulation that's going up, that's part of it. All these things to change in order for us to lower the crime rate. And the thing is, I know that where there's a big fight with the whole gun control situation, and I've been asked, what am I going to do about the gun? Second Amendment bears the right to bear, gives everybody the right to bear arms. So me as a local government, being in local government, it's hard to do something specific about the gun laws unless it comes from the federal government. However, people don't use a gun unless they have to. And so the thing is, when you think of, once again, the poverty rate, the amount of people sleeping on the streets are flooding with people just walking around, drug addicts, and the things they need help. Something needs to be done about it. So I feel like attacking all of these different aspects of what's making the crime rate go up will also affect the decrease in crime in Brockton.
Well, don't you think part of the problem is that Brockton became a dumping community? Led by the Democrats, Michael Dukakis started dumping all the social problems of the state into Brockton. I think he did that to change the demographics of the city at the time because he never did well in Brockton, never carried the city. And I think it was done to that aspect of the city. Brockton became a place where they dumped all the social welfare problems of the state and then bought housing down there and put it in there. There are strings attached when you take state and federal money. Those strings come with restrictions, and taking that money surely hasn't helped the city over the long run. You have a homeless problem that took years to move them out of that where they were all living, down by the tracks there, which should have been done immediately. The city should have moved on that stuff immediately. The fact that the police department is on demand, a size of the city of Brockton needs 250 policemen, patrolmen at least. I think we have 181.
Yes, 184 or
Something like that.
Yeah,
We need 70 more.
we do.
And we shouldn't be sending police officers in harm's way, one in a cruiser. There should always be two
Yes.
policemen in a cruiser. Unless people move to communities, and this is my view, one for the affordability, two for the schools, three for their safety of their family, and four hoping their value of that they buy their house increases. Well, Brockton's failing on two of those counts. It's failing on schools and it's failing on crime. Unless we address those problems, we're going to see the city continue to decline.
We are. We have a downtown that's dead. A lot of businesses are afraid of being open too late because of the crime rate in Brockton. A lot of franchises are afraid to even come to Brockton because of the stigma that is placed on Brockton. So the thing is, all these things have to change. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers right now. I'm not saying that, right, I know I myself am going to change. But I think it's about putting the right people in place and getting the thoughts of the public and listening to what all of you guys feel like needs to happen and taking those ideas and implementing them in order for us to grow in safety, in order for us to grow education-wise, in order for us to grow. We need more police. You're right. We barely see police.
And then it becomes a question, how do we afford more police? They never properly planned. They never funded the pensions when they had the money. They used it for other things. But the way they invested the money...
Brockton is high. Police budget is high. Right now it's third highest. So.
But it isn't high enough to meet the needs of the city of that size. You can say but that's my opinion, and it's just mine. You could say it's a high budget, but if it doesn't meet the needs of the city, what's it accomplishing?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
I mean, it's redirecting and reallocation of resources. If they can solve the crime people, more people would move in and more businesses would come back.
Exactly.
And unless they solve the crime problem, they're not going to get businesses downtown. You see when you're downtown, all the needles everywhere?
Yes, it's pretty
Poorly
bad.
thought of social programs that have failed after 50 years. The last Republican mayor, which when we were partisan, was 1974, Dick Wainwright, who's now passed away this year. A wonderful man. But he predicted all this would happen when the council used to override him on everything. And it has happened. He was a visionary. He saw the future, and what he said would happen did happen. The decline of the city, the rapid decline of Brockton. It's like if you go to Venezuela today, a great country, one of the richest countries in South America, now is the poorest. Failed leadership. It all goes back to the leadership that was chosen years ago that failed to lead us in they thought government was going to be the solution. Government is the problem usually, with the red tape and everything. industry and private industry and the vitality of that would have been better for the city. That is one of your points that you've been articulating.
Yes.
That you believe that bringing more industry into the city would help Brockton.
Yes, industrializing Brockton would go a long way. But I just want to go back to one of the things that you said, and you said failed leadership. And the head controls the body. The thing is, if the head is not right, the body's not going to be right either. So when you have a lot of the people running who have been in positions to make a difference in Brockton, not make a difference, they were in leadership positions when Brockton was declining and nothing was done. The city has not gone up. Why give them a chance to run Brockton again? Why give them that leadership power again? Why not give to someone new who has not had the opportunity to make a difference in Brockton, who was not in a position like these people were to change the outcome of Brockton?
Their failed leadership is responsible for the problems the city faces. They made the wrong decisions years ago. I don't disagree.
They're running right now, and a lot of people are backing them up, and we're not realizing the pattern that if we keep on voting for the same people that failed us, then we're going to get the same results. So it's time for us to get different results. So if you want different results, you got to try something new. You can't try the same thing, expect different outcomes.
So you're saying that their failed leadership would not be rectified by them running again. They made the wrong decisions before, so they would make the wrong decisions again. Which is an argument that you should make. It's a good argument. People vote. I hate to say it, the American public isn't well educated on what is going on in their local communities. They don't spend the time to find out. The downtown has been a problem for 30 years, 40 years. And every politician talks about fixing the downtown. Well, nothing's happened. We do not have a local financial institution that is based in Brockton like we used to. When you look at it, Citizens Bank is out of Rhode Island. Bank of America is out of North Carolina. Chase is coming, that's out of New York City. I guess Harbor One is local. But it's, it just became a bank.
Yeah.
It was a credit union before. You don't have, Crescent Credit Union was sold. It is now owned by Sharon Credit Union. You have when you go down, when I was growing up, you had all kinds of local banks in the city. It indicates there was a vitality of business that could afford to get the banks open. We don't have that. And I hate to say this, the major employer in the city of Brockton a few years ago when I was very active was Massasoit College. It is a state institution. It doesn't create new jobs.
It doesn't, and I think unemployment in Brockton is something that we have to address also. The fact that we're lacking in businesses, we're lacking in franchises, people have to go elsewhere to get jobs. And also, if the people don't have that transportation, then they're forced to live off unemployment. So it's all these things, everything affects each other. Everything, if one thing is failing, it most likely it affects the other. So it's just...
Well, the lack of revenue, it comes down to the lack of revenue always.
It always comes down to that. And
you can't get a message out unless you have money. You can't get, to be known unless you have money. The money gives you the credibility to get the people involved in the campaign. And it's a steamrolling. It is true. Brockton is declining. I don't know of any major local business left in the city.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, when you look about it, there used to be Brockton Savings, Plymouth Home National. There used to be Mass Trust. there used to be all these local financial institutions owned by Brocktonians. There are none today.
A lot of these buildings have been abandoned now, and nothing's being done with the buildings. We can build those.
They ought to knock a lot of them down. They were years ago. We were tearing down 3 families because they had become crime havens in certain areas. Well, they probably, it probably needs to go back to that. We were getting state money to do that at the time. There was a throw-through account that allowed us to come in and get state money to tear buildings down. Well, there's some of them in the downtown area have been there for years and they've never been occupied.
Yeah, and even when you look at the Brockton Mall, you have a lot of major stores closing, and then if Macy's closed down, you have Fowler's that lasted, I want to say, a couple of years, and then you had Marshall's. Well, Marshall's was moved; it was reopened. You had Fowler's. All these stores and all little stores are being opened. So you have Rainbows, and you have Mad Rags, and you have Route 21, and those are minor stores compared to the major stores that we had, and they're all closing down, and it's sad to see that.
I would imagine the mall is not doing well financially.
It is not doing well at all. Only the little stores that are selling clothes for like $12 are staying open.
Right.
So.
Marshall's still there?
Marshall's, yeah, it moved. It reopened. So I forgot what was there before Marshall's. AJ Wright. Oh, I miss AJ Wright.
Oh, they moved over to AJ Wright's
Yeah.
old thing, which is an indication of a city in decline. And when you drive around and you see the grass growing through the sidewalks, it shows an unkept city. When you drive around and you see grass not cut at people's homes, it shows an unkept city. It shows a city that nobody cares about. It shows a decline in urban decline. When you show graffiti on the buildings, it shows decline. It's very interesting. You go to New York, in Manhattan, you don't see any graffiti. That's they get it off the same day it's put on. But I mean, Brockton, you go under those railroad bridges, and it's just low with graffiti. They should be painted over, and the graffiti taken off. It shouldn't be allowed to stay. The city council should have passed an ordinance to fine the owners if they didn't get the graffiti off. And the police department should have prosecuted the people.
Exactly. Once again, it comes down to the policing. We're lacking in that. So the thing is, until we get the
because the
they're
crimes,
focused so much on the crimes, and they're like, we don't have time to focus on graffitis. So
they don't have the time because of
they don't have the resources. They don't have enough men to.
They
do
need
all
70
this.
more officers to bring it up to snuff,
They do.
according to consultants that have looked at the city before. It is never good. It is seeing a rapid decline of the city of champions.
It's sad.
We've seen the school department in decline.
The schools are outdated themselves. It's sad that you have kids in the 21st century going to schools that are looking so old and are being offered new technology, and we're living in a world where technology is so prominent now. And then we have Brockton, where everything just looks outdated. The businesses that you see on Main Street are not even being, I don't want to say forced, but are not being told to, they have to maintain a certain appearance in order for you to even hold a business on Main Street.
I don't know what businesses are left in the city.
You have minor ones, and they
And
don't
they don't
even look. You wouldn't even know there was a business there because it's not kept. It just looks like an abandoned building. And then
Right,
when you go
and they
inside,
don't
there's a
have,
business
these
in
small businesses probably don't have the economic resources to maintain a larger building. And that comes down to decline again. I mean, it's, when they had the resources, the city didn't properly spend them. And that's one of the issues. New leadership for you don't want the failed old leadership. You want new leadership to lead into the 21st century, the 22nd century.
We're going to
Need to be corrected on that. It is always difficult to see, and it is much harder to turn something in decline around once it's going down than when it's going up. when you haven't made the right decisions, it's much tougher to correct them. The wrong decisions what we'll put in place to turn the ship around. And that is the problem. My solution would be to come up with a blueprint and a plan to turn the city around. I would articulate if I were running that we need 250 police officers and put the union to the test. Go after Bill Healy if you're listening. He's the president of the Brockton Police Union. We feel that you need 250 patrolmen, not captains and lieutenants and sergeants, patrolmen and cruisers to have a major impact. The drug unit needs to be increased in size.
Yes, majorly.
Right, and you need to meet with the court personnel to get. Drug addiction is a sickness.
Yes, it's a disease.
So you need to work with the courts to get them help, mental health help. Locking them up isn't going to solve the problem. It never has. It's failed. This massive incarceration that Ted Kennedy didn't work.
It doesn't work, and we're failing to understand that these are people's daughters, sons, their sisters, their mothers. They're people that have fallen and that they need help getting back up. So it's not people that we can just throw away or try to get rid of by throwing them in a jail. They need to be placed in rehabs and halfway houses.
I think it's a very relevant issue. Cornelia Harris, who's running for president, put people in jail because she found them smoking marijuana when she was the Attorney General of California. She locked them all up. She ordered her office to prosecute them all. She was real tough on marijuana. Marijuana wasn't the problem. It's not the person, the user. It's the person selling it. They didn't go after them like they did. They went after the person using it. I don't think she should even be considered for president when you look at her record. She went after the small users and the small people to increase the statistical data to get reelected. It was all about politics. What they needed was help.
They were provided with help.
Right. 50 years of Democratic rule, and look at Massachusetts. In the legislature. Look at it. We're laughing stock of the world. You have a socialist running, U.S. Senate running for president. Most of the younger generation doesn't even know what socialism is. That's where the government makes all your decisions for you, from the cradle to your death. You will do what the government wants. You will live like everybody else, and they will determine what color shirt you will wear, where you'll go to school. Is that the America that you think we should have?
No.
Do you want the government making any of your decisions?
No, I think everyone should have free will and make your own decision. I don't think government should be involved in people's personal lives. I think legal aspects, and then you have civics, but when you go deeper than that, then there starts being a problem where people are so reliant on the government and they expect them to do so much that they're failing to do for themselves. So that system never works, in my opinion.
If you took the incentive of the private industry, private enterprise away from people, nobody's going to do anything.
They're not.
It's going to just decline. When the wind is broke, they stay broken.
And it's going to become an expectation for other people, meaning the government, to lift them up. And it shouldn't be like that. We're not. Government was not formed to babysit.
It's never worked. Look at Venezuela. Look at the Soviet Union. The government collapsed. The country collapsed. Those models have never worked. Once you take away the private incentive to do what you can do, you fail. I mean, you would agree. Socialism is not the path to go down. It's the wrong path to go down. And I see it creeping in. Jimmy Pereira is basically calls himself a social democrat. He believes in socialism. It isn't your philosophy.
Oh, no. I had a talk with him. I didn't know he actually considered himself that.
He calls himself a progressive socialist democrat.
No. Brockton's already struggling as it is. We don't need that. We can't have that. Because we already have so many people depending on the welfare system. And that kind of power will have more people depending on the welfare system, which will lead Brockton to a bigger decline. So we can't have that.
If you lost the private incentive, there would be, I don't know how the city would survive. I mean, who would pay the real estate taxes? The government? And where would they get the money? Printed? And it would be worthless then.
Exactly.
I mean, those programs are failed programs. That model is a failed model. And people like Elizabeth Warren who articulate that vision, it's just wrong. I mean, does she have some sound ideas? Of course she does. So some of the consumer ideas are sound and they should be addressed. But the path of going down socialism, she doesn't talk about the fact that she was paid $400,000 to teach one course at Harvard, which is incredible in itself. They don't talk about that. The mainstream media ignores that, which is totally unfair to someone. They don't talk about the fact that she wrote a book and made $2 million on it. They don't talk about, she didn't donate any of that money to charity. It went in her own pocket. So, I mean, they don't talk about that. The mainstream media has an agenda that they're pushing. Bernie Sanders, who calls himself a socialism, has just bought $1 million summer home. Is that socialism? I don't think so. His wife was in a major scandal about shutting down a college and getting paid $1 million herself, and then the college went bankrupt in Vermont. They just don't address any of that, the mainstream media. But if it was a Republican, it would be front page. There was a dual standard, and that standard is a bias that's innate in the media. And you've got my dissertation for today, but I mean, that bias is very bad. And it's an unfair advantage to one political party over another. And it is very difficult starting out as a Republican. I remember,
It is extremely.
when I got elected, I was the first Republican elected in 35 years or 40 years on a school committee seat. And they all told me I couldn't do it, and I knew I was going to do it. I knocked on every door. I had more signs up. I had more mailings out. And the incumbent was shocked that night. I took it by 65%. So, I mean, hard work is what is needed. We wish you well. You have to get out, knock on doors, meet people. The more people you meet and articulate your vision, the better off you'll be. We wish you well.
Thank you.
How can the public reach you if they want to reach you?
You can reach me by phone 781-888-1676. Once again, 781-888-1676. Or by email, which is Carina Leeza, Carinaleeza@gmail.com.
Now we will have the year in review and an important, what happened that was an important, on this important date in the past.
So the first one we have is in 1888, New York Giants pitcher Tim Keefe sets a 19-game win streak record. And the second one we have for today is in 1821, Missouri was admitted as the 24th U.S. state.
This is Larry Novak with Politically Speaking. Join me next week. I'm going to have some of the council at large candidates on to discuss their platforms in the city of Brockton. I look forward to seeing you next week.